The rain came down in sheets, turning the narrow Gangnam Alley into a river of reflected neon. Ethan Park was bleeding out against the brick wall, every breath a knife in his ribs, but none of that mattered the moment he saw her. Jae-won, running toward him like the answer to every prayer he'd whispered into the dark for 10 endless years. She dropped to her knees in the freezing water, not caring that it soaked through her clothes, not caring about anything except reaching him. Her hands found his face instantly, both palms cradling his jaw, thumbs stroking his rain-slicked cheeks as if she needed to memorize the feel of him all over again. "Ethan," she breathed, voice trembling with a decade of grief and relief. "Look at me. Please, look at me." His eyes, those dark, haunted eyes she'd seen in dreams and nightmares alike, lifted to hers. The world blurred at the edges, but she was crystal clear. Always had been. Her forehead pressed to his, gentle despite the chaos. Their breath mingled in the small, sacred space between them, warm against the cold rain. She could feel the faint tremor in his body, the way he was fighting to stay conscious just for this moment. "I thought I'd never feel you again," she whispered, tears slipping free to mix with the downpour. "Every night. I reached for you in the dark and you weren't there." Ethan's blood-stained hand rose slowly, deliberately, until his fingers threaded into her wet hair. Not pulling, just holding. Anchoring. As if letting go would mean losing her all over again. "I was always there," he rasped, voice raw and broken. "In every heartbeat. In every breath. I never let you go, Jae-won. Not once." Her sob caught in her throat. She leaned closer, lips brushing the corner of his mouth. Not quite a kiss, but something deeper. A promise. A confession. The kind of touch that said, "I carried you with me too." "I dreamed about your hands," she confessed against his skin, voice barely audible over the storm. "The way they used to trace my spine when I couldn't sleep. The way you'd tuck my hair behind my ear just to feel it. I dreamed about your voice saying my name like it was the only word that mattered." His fingers tightened in her hair, just enough to feel real. "I still say it every night," he admitted. "Before I close my eyes. Jae-won. Like a prayer. Like if I said it enough times, you'd hear me and come back." She pulled back barely an inch, eyes searching his. "I heard you," she said fiercely. "I always heard you." The space between their lips was electric, aching, trembling, alive with everything they'd lost and everything still possible. Neither moved to close it. Not yet. This moment was too fragile, too sacred to rush. Instead, she rested her cheek against his, feeling the rough stubble, the warmth of his skin, the faint shudder of his breath against her ear. "I never stopped loving you," he whispered, the words scraping out like they'd been trapped in his chest for 10 years. "Not for 1 second. I built an empire in the dark just to keep you safe from it. I became a monster so you could live in the light." Her arms slid around his neck, careful of his wound but needing him closer. "You're not a monster to me," she said against his throat. "You're the man who waited. The man who never gave up. You're my home, Ethan. You always were." Gunshots cracked in the distance. Closer now. Footsteps splashed through puddles. Shouts echoed off the walls. But in that rain-soaked alley, time stopped. Just them. Just this. Her lips found his temple, pressing a soft, lingering kiss there. Then his cheekbone. Then the corner of his mouth again, each touch a vow. "I'm here. I'm staying." His hand moved from her hair to cradle the back of her neck, holding her to him like she was the only thing keeping him alive. And maybe she was. When she finally pulled back just enough to meet his gaze again, her eyes were fierce with love and determination. "I don't care what you've done," she said, voice steady despite the tears. "I don't care who's coming for us. I'm not leaving you again. Not ever." Ethan's eyes glistened, whether from rain or something else, she couldn't tell. But his next words were a vow carved into stone. "Then we fight together. We live together. Or we die together. But never apart again." She nodded, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that was soft, slow, and devastatingly tender, pouring 10 years of longing, grief, and unbreakable love into it. When they parted, foreheads still touching, she whispered the words he'd waited a decade to hear. "I'm yours, Ethan Park. I always was." Hey, my loves. Welcome to the channel, or welcome home if you've been here with me through every tear-stained story. Tonight, we're stepping into something sacred. He waited 10 years for her, the full, heart-shattering movie-length journey of Ethan Park, the man who ruled Seoul's darkest corners with an iron fist and a heart that belonged entirely to one woman. If your chest is already aching, if you felt that kiss in your soul, drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from. Are you crying yet? Are you holding someone close tonight? And if you haven't subscribed, please, beautiful soul, hit that button and turn on the bell. These stories are for nights when you need to remember that real love, it waits. It fights. It endures. Because what's coming next will pull you even deeper. 10 years earlier, the Han River was alive with light and laughter the night everything ended. Fireworks painted the sky in gold and crimson. Lanterns drifted upward like tiny suns carrying wishes no one dared speak aloud. Ethan Kim, still just Ethan then, 24, soft-hearted, dreaming of designing buildings that touched the clouds, walked along the water with Jae-won Reynolds' hand tucked warmly in his. She was laughing at his terrible joke, head tilted back, throat exposed to the summer air. Her sundress fluttered around her knees. Her eyes held the whole universe. 3 years together. 3 years of late-night study sessions, stolen kisses in library stacks, promises whispered under blankets. He had the ring in his pocket. He was going to ask her to be his forever under the final burst of fireworks. But forever wasn't theirs to claim. The black sedan came out of nowhere. Doors slammed. Masked men moved with purpose. One grabbed her arm. Another pressed a gun to Ethan's temple. Jae-won Reynolds, the leader said coldly. Time to go. She looked at Ethan, terrified, but brave. Always so brave. Don't fight them, she whispered. Please. But he was already moving. The fight was brutal and brief. A blow to his head. A gunshot grazing his shoulder. And then, her scream as they dragged her toward the car. He lunged. For one impossible moment, she broke free and ran back to him. Their bodies crashed together. Her hands framed his face. His arms locked around her waist. They kissed like it was the last time, because it was. Desperate. Devouring. Memorizing. I love you, she gasped against his lips. Always. No matter what. They tore her away. She fought harder this time, nails clawing, voice breaking on his name. Ethan. He reached for her until his fingers bled. The car door slammed. Tires screeched. She was gone. He collapsed on the riverside path, fireworks still blooming overhead. Beautiful, mocking, indifferent. That was the night he lost everything. And the night he decided he would get her back. No matter how long. No matter how dark the path. Now, 10 years later, the rain is falling like tears from the sky. Bullets are flying. Enemies are closing in. But Jae-won is in his arms again. And this time, he will burn the world down before he lets her go. Tell me in the comments, are you already destroyed? Do you believe in second chances yet? Drop a heart if that forehead touch, that whispered confession, that tender kiss in the rain broke something open in you. The rain had eased into a soft mist by the time Ethan's men reached the alley. Black umbrellas bloomed like dark flowers around them. Strong arms lifted Ethan carefully, but his eyes never left Jae-won's face. She walked beside the stretcher, fingers laced tightly with his, refusing to let go even when they loaded him into the armored van. Inside, the world shrank to the low hum of the engine and the quiet rhythm of their breathing. The medic worked quickly, pressure bandages, painkillers, but Ethan waved him off every time he tried to separate Jae-won's hand from his. I'm not going anywhere, she said quietly, reading the fear in his eyes. He nodded once, jaw tight, and finally let the exhaustion pull him under. While he slept, Jae-won studied the man he had become. The boy she loved had been gentle, long fingers always smudged with charcoal from sketching, soft smiles that reached his eyes first. This man carried scars like medals, a thin white line across his eyebrow, the faint burn mark on his throat, the intricate dragon tattoo that curled from his collarbone down beneath the blood-soaked shirt. His hands, once hesitant when they traced her skin, now bore calluses and old breaks. Hands that had clearly taken lives. Yet when he murmured her name in his drug-hazed sleep, His voice was exactly the same. Soft. Pleading. Ji-yeon, don't leave. She pressed her lips to his knuckles, tasting salt and iron, and promised him silently that she never would. Let's go back further now, before the alley, before the blood. Let's meet the people who shaped them, and the secrets that nearly destroyed them both. Ethan Park, once Ethan Kim, was born in a quiet corner of Busan to a schoolteacher mother and a fisherman father. Life was simple. Salt air, shared meals, dreams spoken aloud at the dinner table. His mother taught him kindness. His father taught him resilience. When both died in a ferry accident during his first year of university, Ethan learned grief young. He poured it into his studies, into architecture, into building something that would outlast loss. Then he met Ji-yeon Reynolds. She was half British, half Korean, raised between London and Seoul by a mother who painted and a father who chased deals across continents. Daniel Reynolds was charming, ambitious, and deeply reckless. He built an import-export empire on borrowed money, always one step ahead of ruin. To the world, he was successful. To his daughter, he was distant, affectionate in bursts, always promising next year we'll spend more time together. Ji-yeon grew up craving roots. She found them in books, in poetry, in quiet cafes where she could pretend the world was gentle. And then she found them in Ethan. Their first meeting was accidental, literally. She spilled iced coffee across his sketchbook in the university library. He looked up, annoyed for half a second, then saw her face and forgot how to be angry. I'm so sorry, she'd stammered, dabbing uselessly at the ruined pages. He'd smiled, slow, warm, life-changing. It's okay. Those buildings weren't going anywhere. You, on the other hand. I think I need your name. 3 years of perfect, ordinary happiness followed. Picnics by the Han River. Late-night study dates that turned into dawn. Arguments about whose turn it was to choose the movie, always ending in laughter and kisses. Plans. Big, beautiful plans. Marriage. Travel. A small apartment filled with books and blueprints. They were careful. They used protection every time. They talked about children the way young lovers do, someday, when they were ready. But life doesn't wait for readiness. 3 months before the kidnapping, Ji-yeon discovered she was pregnant. She didn't tell Ethan right away. She wanted to surprise him on the night he planned to propose. She'd bought a tiny pair of knitted booties, pale yellow, and hidden them in her drawer. That night never came. When the Black Dragon Syndicate took her, they didn't know about the child at first. They locked her in a safe house outside Seoul, waiting for her father to pay his debts. But Daniel Reynolds ran. He disappeared to South America with whatever cash he could grab, leaving his daughter as collateral. The syndicate moved her overseas, to a quiet estate in Jeju first, then to a private villa in Thailand when things got too hot in Korea. They treated her well enough, good food, medical care, because a healthy hostage was worth more. When the pregnancy became obvious, they adjusted plans. A child could be leverage. Or insurance. Ji-yeon gave birth alone in a private clinic, paid for by men who discussed her like property. A boy. Perfect. Tiny. With Ethan's dark eyes and her mouth. She named him Minute-jun. For 8 years, she raised him in gilded captivity. Beautiful houses, private tutors, guards at every door. They told her if she behaved, if she didn't try to run, the boy would be safe. They let her believe Ethan was dead, showed her doctored news clippings of a body pulled from the river, unidentified but matching his description. She grieved in silence. She survived for her son. But Ji-yeon was her father's daughter in one way. Clever. Patient. She learned Thai. She charmed the guards. She memorized routines. And when Minute-jun turned 8, she saw her chance, a new guard who looked at her with sympathy instead of indifference. She escaped. She made it to Seoul with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a burner phone she'd stolen. She came back for one reason, to find out if Ethan was truly gone. She never expected to run straight into his arms in a rain-soaked alley. Back in the present, the van pulled into an underground garage beneath a sleek high-rise in AMBW, the heart of Ethan's empire. His men carried him to a private elevator, straight to the penthouse that served as both home and fortress. Ji-yeon followed, heart pounding. The doors opened into a space that stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering Han River. Minimalist furniture in dark wood and steel. Art on the walls, modern, expensive, but one corner held something else, a small shelf of old architecture books, dog-eared and loved. And framed photos, hidden behind a sliding panel, as if he couldn't bear to look at them every day but couldn't bear to put them away either. Photos of them. Young. Laughing. Alive. She touched one gently, Ethan carrying her piggyback at Namsan Tower, both of them grinning like idiots. Behind her, the medic finished stitching Ethan's wound. He was awake now, watching her from the bed with an expression she couldn't name, hope and fear warring in his eyes. "You kept them," she whispered. "I kept everything," he said quietly. "Every photo. Every note you ever wrote me. The ticket stub from our first movie. I couldn't." His voice cracked. "I couldn't let go." She walked to the bed slowly, sat on the edge, and took his hand again. "Ethan," she said, voice trembling with the weight of what she had to tell him. "There's someone, you need to know about." His brow furrowed. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." She swallowed hard. Tears welled again. "I didn't come back alone." His eyes searched hers, confusion deepening. "I brought our son." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan's hand tightened around hers until it hurt. "Our son." She nodded, unable to speak. He closed his eyes. A single tear traced down his temple into his hair. "Minute-jun," she whispered. "His 8. He has your eyes. And he's waiting downstairs with Sujin, one of your people who found us tonight. He's scared, Ethan. But his ours." Ethan's chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. 10 years of violence, of blood, of building walls around his heart, and in one sentence, they crumbled. He pulled her down gently until she was lying beside him, her head on his uninjured shoulder, his arms wrapped around her like he'd never let go. "I have a son," he whispered against her hair, voice thick with wonder and grief and love. "We have a son." She nodded against his chest, feeling his heartbeat thunder beneath her cheek. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," she said. "I was going to, that night. With the fireworks. I had booties in my bag. Yellow ones." He made a sound, half laugh, half sob, and held her tighter. "I would have been so happy," he said. "I would have cried like an idiot." "You're crying now," she pointed out softly. "Yeah," he admitted. "But this time, it's because I have everything I ever wanted. Right here." They stayed like that for a long time, just breathing each other in. Outside, Seoul glittered, unaware that in one quiet penthouse, a family shattered 10 years ago was finally beginning to heal. "My loves, we're only in part 2 and already the tears are flowing, aren't they? If this reunion, this revelation, this quiet moment of holding each other after a decade apart has you emotional, drop a comment right now. Tell me, are you crying happy tears? Do you believe families can find their way back to each other? And if you're not subscribed yet, please, hit that button. Turn on notifications. Because the road ahead is going to test them like never before, but I promise you, it ends in light. Dawn was breaking over Seoul when the penthouse windows turned from black to soft gold. Ethan was finally asleep, painkillers pulling him into a deep, healing rest. Jae-won sat beside him on the bed, one hand gently stroking his hair, the other holding the small, warm hand of their son. Minute-jun had fallen asleep curled against her side an hour earlier, exhausted from the terror of the night. His dark lashes fluttered in dreams, and every time he shifted closer to her, Jae-won's heart broke and mended all over again. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, Ethan meeting their boy. But never like this. Never with blood on the sheets and armed guards outside the door. A soft knock interrupted the quiet. Sujin, Ethan's most trusted lieutenant, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s who had quietly orchestrated their rescue the night before, stepped inside. Her face was grim. "Boss is still out?" she asked in a low voice. Jae-won nodded. "He lost a lot of blood. The doctor said he needs rest." Sujin glanced at the sleeping child, something soft flickering across her usually guarded expression. Then she hardened again. "We have a problem. Big one." Ji-yeon's stomach tightened. Tell me. Soo-jin handed her a tablet. On the screen, security footage from the alley. Ji-yeon running. Ethan collapsing. Gunfire. And then, clear as day, the face of the man leading the chase. Kang Tae-ho. Leader of the Black Dragon Syndicate remnant. The very men who had taken her 10 years ago. Ji-yeon's breath caught. He's still alive. Worse, Soo-jin said. He's not just alive. He's been rebuilding quietly. And last night, when you showed up in Seoul, word spread fast in the underground. Someone tipped him off that the ghost girl was back. He wants you. Both of you. And now he knows Ethan Park, the man who's been dismantling his empire piece by piece for years, is the same kid who tried to stop the kidnapping back then. Ji-yeon's hand trembled. He'll come for us. He's already coming, Soo-jin confirmed. Intercepts say he's calling in every favor, every old alliance. He wants Ethan dead. You and the boy as leverage, or worse. The room felt suddenly colder. Ji-yeon looked down at Minute-jun's peaceful face, then at Ethan's. 2 miracles she had only just reclaimed. And now someone wanted to rip them away again. She stood slowly, careful not to wake either of them, and followed Soo-jin to the living room. Show me everything, she said, voice steady despite the storm inside. Soo-jin laid it out. Over the last decade, while Ethan rose to power, taking territory, crushing rivals, building the most feared organization in Seoul, he had done it with one unspoken goal: find Ji-yeon. Every move was calculated to weaken the people who took her. He never killed indiscriminately, but anyone connected to the Black Dragons paid dearly. Kang Tae-ho had gone underground after the botched kidnapping payoff, presumed dead or fled. But he'd been in Busan all this time, quietly rebuilding, waiting. And now the past had collided with the present. Soo-jin finished with the worst part. There's a meeting tonight. Neutral ground. Kang wants to talk. Ji-yeon's eyes narrowed. He wants to negotiate. He wants to surrender terms, Soo-jin corrected. He says if Ethan hands you and the boy over, he'll call off the war. No more blood. Ethan walks away with his empire intact. Ji-yeon laughed, sharp, bitter. And Ethan will never agree. No, Soo-jin agreed. He won't. Which means war. Full war. And Kang has allies we didn't know about. Foreign money. Weapons we haven't seen before. We're strong, but this could tear everything apart. Ji-yeon stared out the window at the waking city. 10 years ago, she had been powerless. A terrified girl dragged into a car, unable to protect the man she loved or the child she carried. Not anymore. She turned back to Soo-jin. Wake Ethan when he's strong enough. Tell him I want to be at that meeting. Soo-jin's eyes widened. No. Absolutely not. He'll never. He doesn't get to decide this for me, Ji-yeon said firmly. Not this time. I've spent 10 years surviving monsters. I'm done hiding behind him. Soo-jin hesitated, then nodded once. Respect in her gaze. Evening fell fast. Ethan woke to find Ji-yeon dressed in black, simple, elegant, deadly calm, sitting at the vanity brushing her hair like she was preparing for a date, not a war council. He sat up too quickly, wincing. What's happening? She met his eyes in the mirror. Kang wants to meet. Tonight. You're going. He swung his legs off the bed, already reaching for his shirt. Damn right I am. And so am I. The shirt froze halfway over his head. No, the word came out flat. Final. Ji-yeon stood, walked to him, and gently helped pull the shirt down over his bandages. Yes, she said softly. You don't get to lose me again by trying to protect me the wrong way. We do this together, Ethan. Or we don't survive it at all. He stared at her, really looked. The girl he loved was still there, but tempered now. Stronger. Fiercer. A woman who had raised their son alone in captivity. Who had escaped with nothing but courage. His resistance crumbled. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheeks. You scare me more than Kang ever could. She smiled, small, sad, determined. Good. Use it. They arrived at the meeting place just after midnight, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Incheon, neutral ground watched by both sides. Ethan walked in first, flanked by Sejin and 3 lieutenants. Ji-yeon followed 1 step behind, hand resting lightly on his arm, a united front. Kang Tae-ho waited in the center under a single hanging bulb. Older now. Grey at the temples. But the same cold eyes. His gaze locked on Ji-yeon immediately. "Well," he said, voice smooth as poison. "The ghost returns." And with Park's leash around her neck. Ethan's jaw clenched, but Ji-yeon squeezed his arm, steady. Kang continued. "I'm a reasonable man. You took everything from me over the years. Park. Territory. Men. Pride. But I'll let it go. All of it. If you give me the woman and the child." Ethan's voice was ice. "Never." Kang smiled. "Then you die tonight." He snapped his fingers. Doors slammed open on all sides. Dozens of men poured in, armed to the teeth. Ethan's team raised weapons, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Kang spread his hands. "Last chance." Ji-yeon stepped forward, away from Ethan's protection. Every gun swung toward her. Ethan's heart stopped. But she didn't flinch. "You want me?" she asked Kang, voice clear and unafraid. "Fine. But first, you're going to listen." She reached into her coat slowly. Kang tensed. She pulled out a small flash drive and tossed it at his feet. "Everything you've done for the last 10 years, she said. "Every offshore account. Every shipment. Every name of every official you've paid off. Including the ones who helped you hide in Busan." Kang's smile faltered. "I've been busy too," Ji-yeon continued. "While you thought I was just a scared little hostage, I was listening, learning, copying. And when I escaped, I made sure to take insurance." She looked at Ethan, love and fire in her eyes. "If anything happens to us tonight," she said loudly, for everyone to hear, "that drive goes live. To the police. To the press. To every rival syndicate in Asia. You'll be dead by morning, hunted by your own kind." Silence. Kang stared at the drive like it was a bomb. Then, slowly, he looked up at her. And for the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Ji-yeon stepped closer to Ethan, threading her fingers through his. "So here's the new deal," she said. "You walk away. Tonight. You disappear for good. Or you lose everything." Kang's men shifted uneasily, guns lowering slightly. Ethan couldn't hide his awe. His pride. His love. He pulled her against his side, kissed her temple fiercely, and spoke for the first time since the standoff began. "You heard the lady," he said, voice low and lethal. "Walk. Or burn." Kang's jaw worked. Seconds stretched into eternity. Finally, he bent down, picked up the drive, and crushed it under his heel. Ethan tensed, but Kang raised a hand to his own men. "Stand down," he ordered. They obeyed, confused but compliant. Kang looked at Ji-yeon one last time. "You're more like your father than I thought," he said bitterly. Then he turned and walked out, his men following. The warehouse emptied. Just like that. The war ended before it began. Ethan turned to Ji-yeon, disbelief and adoration written across his face. "How?" She smiled, shaky now that the adrenaline was fading. "I've been planning that moment for years," she admitted. "Multiple copies. Cloud backups. Dead man switches. I wasn't going to come back defenseless." He laughed, disbelieving, relieved, and pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "You incredible, terrifying woman," he whispered. "You just saved us all." She clung to him, finally letting the tears come. "Not just us," she said against his chest. "Our family. My beautiful souls. Can you believe that twist? The quiet girl from 10 years ago just brought down an empire with nothing but courage and preparation." The weeks that followed the warehouse showdown should have been peaceful. Kang Tae-ho vanished, no sightings, no whispers, no moves against Ethan's territory. Seoul's underworld held its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But on the surface, life settled into something almost normal. Almost. Ethan moved Ji-yeon and Minute-jun into the penthouse permanently. He turned one of the spare rooms into a child's paradise overnight. Bookshelves filled with Korean and English stories, a desk for drawing, a window overlooking the Han River so Minute-jun could watch the boats during the day and the city lights at night. Minute-jun was quiet at first. Wide-eyed. Careful. He clung to his mother's hand whenever Ethan entered the room, peeking at this tall, scarred stranger who looked at him like he was the most precious thing in the world. Ethan didn't push. He simply was there. He'd sit on the floor and build Lego skyscrapers with Minute-jun in silence. Leave little sketches on the boy's desk, dragons that looked friendly, buildings with secret rooms. Read bedtime stories in a low, gentle voice that made Ji-yeon's heart ache with how much she'd missed it. Slowly, Minute-jun warmed. One evening, Ji-yeon found them on the balcony. Ethan was pointing out constellations, making up ridiculous names for them. Minute-jun giggled, the first real laugh she'd heard from him in weeks, and leaned against Ethan's side. Ethan looked down at the boy, eyes shining, and carefully wrapped an arm around him. Minute-jun didn't pull away. Ji-yeon stood in the doorway, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. This was the life they were supposed to have had. Stolen for 10 years. Finally reclaimed. But peace is fragile when it's built on buried bodies. The first crack appeared 3 weeks later. Ethan came home late, the metallic scent of blood clinging to his jacket even after he'd showered. Ji-yeon was waiting in the living room, arms crossed. "You promised no more nights like this," she said quietly. He stopped in the doorway, shoulders sagging. It was a loose end. One of Kang's old lieutenants trying to rally men. "I handled it." "Handled it how?" He didn't answer. Just looked at her with exhausted eyes. She stepped closer, reached up, and touched the fresh cut on his cheekbone. "This isn't the life I want for Minute-jun," she whispered. "Or for you." Ethan caught her hand, pressed it against his skin. "I'm trying to make it safe. Once Kang is truly gone. He's already gone. You don't have to keep fighting ghosts." But he was. Every night. In his dreams. In the way he checked locks 3 times. In the way he flinched when Minute-jun accidentally slammed a door. The second crack came from Ji-yeon herself. She started having panic attacks. They came without warning, standing in the kitchen making breakfast, or reading to Minute-jun, or lying beside Ethan in bed. Suddenly the walls closed in. Her chest tightened. Memories flooded back, the sound of locks clicking, guards' footsteps in the hallway, the fear that if she made one wrong move her son would suffer. The first time it happened in front of Ethan, she tried to hide in the bathroom. He followed, knelt outside the door, voice soft. "Ji-yeon, let me in. Please." She couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. He didn't force the door. Just sat there, talking low and steady. "I'm here. You're safe. We're in the penthouse. 32nd floor. Armed guards outside. Minute-jun's asleep in his room with his dragon nightlight. You're wearing my old university hoodie, the one you used to steal. Feel it. Soft cotton. My cologne still on the collar. Breathe with me, love. In, out." Slowly, the panic receded. When she finally opened the door, shaking, he pulled her into his arms without a word. Held her on the bathroom floor until she stopped trembling. After that, the attacks came more often. Ethan started sleeping less, watching over her at night, one hand always touching her even in sleep. They began arguing. Quiet, desperate arguments whispered so Minute-jun wouldn't hear. "You need help," Ethan said one night. "A therapist. Someone who understands trauma." "I can't talk to a stranger about what happened," she hissed back. "They'll ask questions. Dig into things that could put us all at risk. Then talk to me. I don't want you to see me weak." He took her face in his hands, eyes fierce. "You carried our son alone for 8 years in a cage. You escaped. You faced down Kang with nothing but a flash drive and courage. You are the strongest person I've ever known. Letting me hold you when it hurts, that's not weakness. That's trust." She cried then. Hard. Ugly sobs against his chest. He held her through all of it. But the tension kept building. Sujin brought more reports, strange movements in Busan. Money flowing into old Black Dragon accounts. Whispers that Kang wasn't really gone, that the warehouse surrender had been a ruse to buy time. Ethan doubled security. Installed bulletproof glass. Started carrying again, even inside the penthouse. Minute-jun noticed. One afternoon, he found Ethan cleaning a gun at the dining table. The boy froze in the doorway. Ethan looked up, cursed under his breath, and quickly covered it with a cloth. "Hey, buddy," he said softly. "Come here." Minute-jun didn't move. "Is that why you have all the scars?" the boy asked in a small voice. Ethan's heart shattered. He pushed the chair back, went to Minute-jun, and knelt so they were eye level. "Some of them, yeah," he admitted. "But most are from trying to find your mom. From trying to bring her home to you before you were even born." Minute-jun studied him solemnly. "Are the bad men still coming?" Ethan hesitated, then chose truth. "I don't know. But if they do, I'll protect you. Both of you. Always." Minute-jun nodded slowly, then reached out and touched the scar on Ethan's eyebrow. "Does it hurt?" "Not anymore." The boy leaned forward and kissed it gently, the way Jae-won used to when they were young. Ethan's eyes filled. He pulled Minute-jun into a hug, holding him like he was made of glass. Jae-won watched from the hallway, throat tight. That night, she and Ethan lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. "We can't keep living like this," she whispered. "I know. I want him to have a normal childhood. Parks. School friends. No guards following him everywhere." Ethan turned to her, traced her cheek with his thumb. "What are you saying?" "That maybe we leave." He stilled. "Leave Seoul?" he asked quietly. "Leave everything. Your empire. The name Ethan Park. We take new identities. Go somewhere quiet. Canada, maybe. Or New Zealand. Somewhere with mountains and clean air and no ghosts." He was silent for a long time. "You'd be safe," he said finally. "Both of you. I could sell everything. Liquidate. We'd never have to look over our shoulders again." She searched his face. "But you. Could you leave it all behind?" He smiled, sad, tender. "For you. For him. I'd burn it all to the ground myself." They kissed then, slow, deep, full of grief for what they'd lost and hope for what they could still have. But fate, as always, had other plans. The next morning, Sujin burst into the penthouse without knocking, something she never did. Her face was ashen. "We have a problem." She laid photos on the table. Surveillance images. Kang Tae-ho, alive, healthy, meeting with men in suits. Foreign men. And one face stood out. Daniel Reynolds. Ji-yeon's father. The man who had started it all by running 10 years ago. He was back. And he was standing next to Kang like old friends. Ji-yeon stared at the photo, blood draining from her face. Ethan's hand found hers under the table, squeezing tight. Sujin delivered the final blow. "They're planning something big. In 3 days. Here in Seoul. And the intel says they're coming for the boy." The room spun. Ji-yeon's greatest fear, someone taking Minute-jun from her, rose like a monster from the deep. Ethan stood slowly, rage and resolve hardening his features. "Then we end this," he said. "Once and for all." He looked at Ji-yeon. "Together." She met his gaze, terrified, but unbreakable. "Together." The folder hit the floor with a soft, final thud. Ji-yeon didn't move. Couldn't. Her body had gone numb, as if her heart had stopped beating just to keep her from feeling the full weight of what she'd just read. Ethan's hands, those strong, scarred hands that had held her through nightmares, trembled as he clutched the paternity report. His eyes scanned the page again and again, searching for a mistake, a forgery, anything that would make the black and white truth disappear. But the words stayed cruelly clear. Biological father. Daniel Reynolds. Not Ethan. Never Ethan. The child she had carried, protected, loved with every shattered piece of her soul for 9 years, was the product of violation. Of the man who had betrayed her in every possible way. A sound escaped her, low, animal, broken. Not a scream. Not a sob. Something deeper. Something that came from the marrow. She crumpled. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, catching her before she hit the ground. He pulled her into his chest, arms locking around her like steel bands, as if he could physically hold her together when everything inside her was splintering. Her fingers clawed at his shirt, twisting the fabric until her knuckles went white. "No," she whispered against his throat, voice raw and ragged. "No, no, no, please God, no." Each word cracked open a fresh wound. Ethan's own tears, hot, silent, fell into her hair. He had cried only twice in the last 10 years, the night she was taken and the night he first held their son. Now he cried again, great shuddering breaths that shook them both. But even through his own devastation, his voice stayed steady for her. "Listen to me," he rasped, pulling back just enough to cradle her face. His thumbs wiped at her tears, but more kept coming. "Look at me, Jae-won. Please." Her eyes, shattered, haunted, finally met his. "That paper changes nothing," he said fiercely. "Nothing. Minute-jun is ours. He has been since the moment you carried him. Since the moment I saw his face and saw you in every line of it. Blood doesn't make a father. Love does. And I have loved that boy since before he took his first breath." A sob tore from her throat. She tried to shake her head, but he held her still. "I held him yesterday," he continued, voice breaking but unrelenting. "He fell asleep on my chest while we watched the river lights. His little hand was curled right here, he pressed her palm over his heart, and he sighed my name in his sleep. Appa." He said it, Jae-won. Clear as day. Fresh tears streamed down her face, but they were different now, grief mixed with something desperate and grateful. "I missed everything," Ethan whispered, forehead dropping to hers. His first steps. His first words. The first time he smiled. "I missed it all because I was out there tearing the world apart trying to get back to you. But I'm here now. And I choose him. Every single day. I choose you both." She broke then, completely. Her body folded into his, sobs racking her so violently he had to hold her up. All the buried horror, the shame she'd never allowed herself to feel, the terror that this truth would make her unlovable, unworthy, it poured out of her in waves. Ethan didn't shush her. Didn't tell her it was okay. He just held her through the storm, rocking gently, murmuring her name like a prayer. "I've got you," he whispered over and over. "I've got you. I'm not letting go. Never again." When the sobs finally quieted to trembling breaths, she clung to him like he was the only solid thing left in the world. "I didn't remember," she confessed in a voice so small it barely existed. "My mind, it protected me. I blocked it out. But my body remembered. The panic attacks. The way I flinch sometimes when..." He pressed a finger to her lips, gentle but firm. "Stop," he said softly. "You survived. That's all that matters. You protected our son. You brought him back to me. You are the bravest person I've ever known." She searched his eyes, terrified of what she might find. But there was no disgust. No distance. Only love, fiercer than ever. "I need you to hear me," he said, voice thick with emotion. "What happened to you was not your fault. It does not define you. It does not touch what we have. And it does not, will never, change how I feel about Minute-jun." He took her hand and placed it over his heart again. "This beats for you. For him. For the family we fought hell to have. And no piece of paper from monsters will ever take that away." Jae-won's breath hitched. She leaned forward slowly, resting her forehead against his. "I love you," she whispered, the words shaking. "So much it hurts." He kissed her then, slow, reverent, pouring 10 years of waiting, of longing, of unbreakable devotion into it. When they parted, both were crying, but their hands stayed locked together. "We tell him nothing," Ethan said quietly. "Not until he's old enough to understand, if ever. He is our son. That's the only truth he needs." She nodded, relief flooding her. Then, steel returning to her voice, she said, "And tomorrow, we end them. Both of them. For what they tried to take from us." Ethan's eyes darkened with the same resolve. "Together," he vowed. "Together," she echoed. They rose as one, hands still entwined, and walked to Minute-jun's room. The boy was asleep, curled around the stuffed dragon Ethan had bought him, peaceful and perfect. They stood in the doorway, watching him breathe. Ethan wrapped his arms around Ji-yeon from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. His hours, he whispered again, like saying it enough times would make the universe obey. She covered his arms with hers. His hours, she repeated, voice steady now. And in that quiet moment, with their son safe between them and their love forged stronger in the fire of truth, they found the strength for what came next. The war wasn't over. But now they knew exactly what they were fighting for. My loves, are you okay? This part broke me writing it, and I know it broke you too. If you're crying, if your chest hurts with how much they love each other, if Ethan's words healed something in you the way they healed Ji-yeon, please drop a comment right now. Tell me you felt it. Tell me you believe love can survive even this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please, beautiful soul, do it now. Turn on the bell. Because what comes next, the darkest hour, will test them beyond anything they've faced. But I promise you, they will rise. The night before the final battle, Seoul was unnaturally quiet. No rain. No wind. Just a heavy, suffocating stillness that pressed against the penthouse windows like the city itself was holding its breath. Ethan and Ji-yeon barely slept. They lay tangled in the dark, her back to his chest, his arm locked around her waist as if even unconsciousness might try to steal her away. Every so often one of them would shift, reach for the other, reaffirm with touch what words had already promised. At 3 a.m., Ji-yeon slipped from bed. Ethan's eyes opened instantly. Where are you going? To check on Minute-jun. He followed her anyway. They stood together in the doorway of their son's room, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest under the dragon nightlight. Minute-jun had kicked off his blanket. Ethan stepped forward silently, tucked it back around him, then brushed a soft kiss to the boy's forehead. Ji-yeon's heart cracked open all over again. When they returned to bed, neither pretended to sleep anymore. Ethan pulled her on top of him, hands framing her face. Whatever happens tomorrow, he whispered. Know this, meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. Loving you saved me. Having you back, having our family, it's more than I ever deserved. Tears slipped from her eyes onto his cheeks. Don't talk like you're saying goodbye, she said fiercely. I'm not, he promised. I'm saying thank you. For every moment. They made love again, slow, quiet, desperate. Memorizing. Worshipping. As if it might be the last time. Dawn brought the storm. The attack came faster and harder than Intel predicted. Not at night. At 7:42 a.m., when Minute-jun was eating breakfast, when Ji-yeon was pouring coffee, when Ethan was reading the morning reports. The first explosion rocked the building's foundation. Glass shattered inward. Smoke grenades hissed through broken windows. Masked men in black tactical gear rappelled from the roof, crashed through doors, flooded the hallways. Ethan's security fought back instantly, gunfire erupting like thunder, but they were outnumbered, outgunned. Ethan shoved Ji-yeon and Minute-jun behind him, gun already in hand. Bedroom. Safe room. Go. Ji-yeon scooped Minute-jun up, running. But the intruders were everywhere. A mercenary rounded the corner, rifle raised. Ethan shot him without hesitation. Another came from the side. Ji-yeon grabbed the vase from the hall table, smashed it over the man's head, then kicked his weapon away. They made it to the bedroom. Ethan slammed the reinforced door, engaged the locks. The safe room was behind the walk-in closet. But before they could reach it, the door exploded inward. Kang Tai-ho stepped through the smoke, gaunt, eyes wild with terminal rage, flanked by 6 men. Daniel Reynolds trailed behind him, pale and sweating. Ethan raised his gun. Kang smiled. Lower it. Park. Or my men put a bullet in the boy right now. 2 red laser dots appeared on Minute-jun's chest. Ji-yeon stepped in front of their son instinctively. Ethan's hand trembled, but he lowered the weapon. Kang's gaze raked over them. 10 years, he rasped. You took everything from me. Now I take everything from you. He nodded to his men. They moved. Ethan fought, brutal, ferocious, but there were too many. Fists. Elbows. Gun butts. He took down 3 before they overwhelmed him. Ji-yeon screamed his name as they forced him to his knees, zip ties cutting into his wrists. Minute-jun was ripped from her arms. She lunged, clawing, biting, kicking, but a blow to her temple sent her sprawling. Blood trickled into her eye. Kang crouched in front of Ethan. "You waited 10 years for her," he mocked. "How does it feel to lose her all over again?" Ethan's face was blooded, but his eyes burned. "You're already dead," he spat. "You just don't know it yet." Kang laughed, then turned to Daniel Reynolds. "Your turn. Prove your loyalty. Kill the boy. Show me you're still useful." Daniel froze. Everyone froze. The room went deathly silent. Daniel's hand shook as he raised the pistol Kang handed him. He looked at Minute-jun, crying, reaching for Ji-yeon. Then at Ji-yeon, on her knees, begging. "Please, here's your son." Daniel's face crumpled. For one heartbeat, something human flickered. Then Kang snarled, "Do it." Daniel turned the gun, not toward Minute-jun, toward Kang. The shot was deafening. Kang staggered, blood blooming across his chest. Chaos erupted. Ethan surged up, snapping his restraints against the edge of broken furniture, tackling the nearest guard. Ji-yeon dove for the fallen gun. Daniel fired again, wild, panicked, hitting one of Kang's men. But Kang wasn't dead. He raised his own weapon, shot Daniel point-blank in the head. Daniel dropped. Ji-yeon screamed, a raw, primal sound of 10 years' worth of pain. She fired at Kang. Missed. He fired back. The bullet meant for her hit Ethan instead. He'd thrown himself in front. Ethan went down hard. Ji-yeon's world narrowed to a single point. She charged Kang, empty gun raised like a club. He backhanded her, sent her crashing into the wall. Minute-jun's cries echoed. Kang limped toward the boy. "This ends with your legacy in my hands," he hissed. But Soo-jin and the remaining security breached the room then, guns blazing. Kang's last men fell. Kang took another bullet, this one fatal. He collapsed, eyes wide, blood pooling. Silence. Then, Ji-yeon crawling across the floor to Ethan. He was on his back, hand pressed to his side, blood soaking through his shirt. "Ethan, Ethan, look at me." His eyes found hers, glazed, but still fierce. "Hey, beautiful," he whispered, trying to smile. Tears blurred her vision. "No, no, you don't get to leave me. Not now. Not after everything." Minute-jun ran to them, throwing himself across Ethan's chest, sobbing. "Appa! Appa, don't sleep." Ethan's free hand came up slowly, stroking the boy's hair. "I'm here, buddy," he rasped. "I'm right here." Ji-yeon pressed both hands over the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me," she begged. "Please. We're supposed to grow old together. You promised." His fingers found hers over the blood. "I love you," he said, voice fading. "Both of you, so much." His eyes started to close. "No." Ji-yeon screamed. "Ethan, open your eyes. Open them." Soo-jin was on the radio. "Medics, now, hurry." But the room was spinning. Ji-yeon leaned down, pressed her forehead to his, tears falling onto his face. "You waited 10 years for me," she whispered brokenly. "Now you wait a little longer. You hear me? You wait for us." His chest rose once more, shallow, labored. Then stilled. The world stopped. Minute-jun's wails filled the silence. Ji-yeon collapsed over Ethan's body, clutching him, rocking, refusing to let go. Everything they'd fought for. Everything they'd reclaimed. Gone. In one heartbeat. The darkest hour had come. And it felt like it would never end. The medics had stopped working. They stood back, heads bowed, giving the family space that no longer made sense. Ji-yeon was still draped over Ethan's body, her cheek against his silent chest, Minute-jun curled between them. Both of them holding on to a man whose warmth was already beginning to fade. Time had no meaning. Minutes. Hours. It didn't matter. Soo-jin knelt nearby, tears cutting clean tracks through the soot on her face. She opened her mouth once to speak, then closed it again. There were no words big enough. Ji-yeon's hand kept stroking Ethan's hair, The same way she had the night he came home wounded in the rain. Over and over. A rhythm that said stay, stay, stay. Minute-Jun's sobs had quieted to broken hiccups. He pressed his small palm flat over Ethan's heart, as if he could will it to beat again. Come back, Appa, he whispered. You promised you'd teach me how to draw a real dragon. You promised we'd go to the ocean. You promised. His voice cracked. Jae-won lifted her head slowly. Her face was streaked with blood and tears, eyes swollen, but something shifted behind them. A spark. Not hope, something harder. Refusal. She looked down at Ethan's face, peaceful now, almost like he was sleeping, and leaned close to his ear. You listen to me, Ethan Park, she said, voice low and fierce and trembling. You do not get to leave us. Not after everything. Not after you waited 10 years. Not after you taught our son what a father is supposed to be. Her fingers tightened in his shirt. I know you're tired. I know it hurts. But you don't get to rest yet. We need you. I need you. Minute-Jun needs you. She pressed her lips to his, soft, deliberate. Then pulled back. Fight, she commanded. Fight for us the way you always have. Minute-Jun looked up at her, eyes wide and red. Is Appa gone forever? Jae-won met her son's gaze. Not if we don't let him, she said. She turned to the nearest medic, still lingering, uncertain. You, she said, voice cutting through the haze like steel. Defibrillator. Now. The man hesitated. It's been too long. There's no. Now. The word cracked like a whip. He moved. They cleared space. Charged the paddles. Jae-won pulled Minute-Jun gently to her side, shielding his eyes but letting him stay close. Clear. The jolt went through Ethan's body. Nothing. Again. Nothing. Jae-won's breath shook, but her voice didn't waver. One more time. The medic looked at her, saw something in her eyes that made him obey without question. Clear. Third shock. And then. A gasp. Faint. Impossible. But there. Ethan's chest jerked. The monitor, silent before, beeped once. Then again. Irregular. Weak. But there. The medic sprang into action. Compressions, oxygen, drugs. Jae-won fell back on her heels, hands over her mouth, tears streaming fresh. Minute-Jun stared, frozen. Is he? He's fighting, Jae-won whispered. He heard us. Sujin dropped her head into her hands, shoulders shaking with relief. They rushed Ethan to the private hospital in the basement of the building, Ethan's own facility, built for emergencies exactly like this. Doctors swarmed. Jae-won and Minute-Jun were forced to wait outside the operating room. She paced, blooded, bruised, unbreakable. Minute-Jun sat on a chair too big for him, clutching the stuffed dragon Ethan had given him weeks ago. Every time the doors opened, Jae-won stopped breathing. Finally, after 3 endless hours, the surgeon emerged. Jae-won met him halfway. He's alive, the doctor said before she could ask. Barely. The bullet missed the heart by millimeters. He lost massive blood. Went into cardiac arrest. But, his back. Stabilized. In ICU. It's going to be a long recovery, if he wakes up. Jae-won's knees nearly gave out. Sujin caught her. When can we see him? Now. But only for a minute. They let her and Minute-Jun in first. Ethan lay hooked to machines, tubes, wires, monitors beeping steady now. Pale. Still. But breathing. Jae-won took his hand, careful of the four, and pressed it to her cheek. You came back, she whispered, voice thick with wonder and love. You heard us. You fought. Minute-Jun climbed carefully onto the bed's edge, laid his head on Ethan's arm. I knew you would, he said softly. You always keep your promises. Jae-won leaned over, kissed Ethan's forehead. We're here, she said. We're not going anywhere. So you rest now. Heal. And when you open your eyes, we'll be waiting. She rested her head gently on his shoulder, close enough to feel the faint warmth returning to his skin. Minute-Jun's small hand found Ethan's fingers. Mother and son stayed like that, guarding him, loving him, refusing to let death win. Outside the room, Sejin stood watch. The empire Ethan had built would need to change, cleaner hands, new directions, but that was tomorrow's fight. Tonight, love had pulled a man back from the edge. Tonight, a family held vigil. And in the quiet beeps of the monitor, hope, real, fierce, earned, began to burn bright again. My beautiful souls. We made it through the darkness. 3 months later. The private hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fresh lilies. Jae-won brought a new bouquet every day. Ethan was awake. Not fully healed. Far from it. Scars crisscrossed his chest, his left lung would never be the same, and some days the pain stole his breath. But his eyes were open. His hand was warm. His voice, when he used it, was the same low rumble that had anchored her through every storm. He was alive. And that was everything. Jae-won sat on the edge of the bed, Minute-jun between them, the three of them building a Lego tower that was supposed to be the Seoul skyline but looked more like a drunken Namsan tower. Minute-jun giggled when the top piece fell for the 3rd time. Ethan's laugh, rough, unused, but real, joined in. Jae-won's heart flipped the way it had the first time she heard it 10 years ago in a university library. She leaned over and kissed Ethan softly, slow, grateful, full of promises kept. Minute-jun made a disgusted noise. Ew, grown-up stuff. Ethan ruffled his hair. You'll understand one day, buddy. Never, Minute-jun declared, but he snuggled closer anyway. Later, when Minute-jun was asleep in the corner chair, blanket tucked around him, Jae-won lay beside Ethan, careful of tubes and wires, and rested her head on his shoulder. Sejin came by earlier, she said quietly. Everything's handled. Ethan's fingers traced slow circles on her arm. Tell me. The empire, what's left of it, is gone. Clean. She liquidated the legitimate businesses, dissolved the rest. Paid off loyalties. Erased traces. Kang's network is ash. No one's coming for us anymore. He nodded slowly. And the money? Enough for 10 lifetimes. Offshore. Clean. We can go anywhere. He turned his head, wincing slightly, and met her eyes. Where do you want to go? She smiled, small, radiant. Somewhere with mountains. And ocean. Somewhere Minute-jun can run barefoot without guards. Somewhere we can just be. New Zealand, he said. South Island. I looked it up. Quiet towns. Good schools. Big skies. Her eyes filled. You already planned it. I had time, he said dryly. 3 months in this bed. A man thinks. She kissed him again, deeper this time. Then New Zealand it is. But there was one final piece. The next day, Sejin arrived with a small wooden box. Inside, 2 things. First, a flash drive. Everything on your father, she said to Jae-won. Financials. Confessions he recorded before the end. Proof of what he did to you. To others. It's enough to bury his name forever if you want. Jae-won stared at it for a long moment. Then closed the box. Destroy it, she said. He's already dead. I don't need his ghost anymore. Sejin nodded, respect in her eyes. The second item, a simple gold band. Ethan's wedding ring, the one he'd bought 10 years ago, the night of the fireworks. The one he'd carried in his pocket every day since, waiting for the moment he'd find her again. Sejin handed it to him. I kept it safe, she said. Figured you'd want it when you woke up. Ethan turned the ring over in his fingers, worn now from years against his skin. He looked at Jae-won. She was already crying. Jae-won Reynolds, he said, voice rough with emotion. I was going to ask you this under fireworks. I had it all planned. Speech and everything. But I lost the chance. Then I lost you. Then I found you again. And I almost lost everything. He took her hand. I don't have fireworks today. Just this bed, this ring, and a heart that's been yours since the day you spilled coffee on my sketches. Minute-jun stirred awake, sensing the shift in the room. Ethan smiled at him, then back at her. Marry me. Not because we survived hell. But because I want every ordinary day with you. Breakfasts. Arguments about whose turn it is to do dishes. Teaching Minute-jun to ride a bike. Growing old and grey and annoying together. Marry me, Ji-yun. Let me love you out loud for the rest of our lives. Tears streamed down her face. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. Perfect fit, even after all these years. Minute-jun clapped. Does this mean I get cake? They laughed, wet, joyful, free. 2 weeks later, they were married in the hospital garden. Simple. Private. Ji-yun wore a white sundress, the same style she'd worn the night she was taken. Ethan wore a suit, standing with the help of a cane, but standing. Minute-jun carried the rings, grinning ear to ear. Sujin was the only witness. Vows were short. Ethan's voice shook only once. I waited 10 years for you, he said. I'd wait 1,000 more. But thank God I don't have to. Ji-yun's were fierce. You are my home. My heart. My forever. In this life and whatever comes next. They kissed, long, unhurried, sealing 10 years of pain into a lifetime of healing. That night, Ethan was discharged. They didn't go back to the penthouse. A private jet waited. Destination: Queenstown, New Zealand. As the plane climbed into the sky, Minute-jun asleep against Ji-yun's side, Ethan laced his fingers with hers over the armrest. She looked out the window, Seoul glittering below, growing smaller. Then at the ring on her finger. Then at him. We made it, she whispered. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. We did more than make it, he said. We won. The city disappeared beneath the clouds. Behind them, ghosts buried. Ahead, everything they dreamed of the night fireworks lit the Han River. A new beginning. Earned in blood. Built on love. Unbreakable. My loves, breathe. They did it. 5 years later. Queenstown, New Zealand. The morning sun spilled gold across the lake, turning the water into a mirror of snow-capped mountains. A wooden house sat on a gentle slope above the shore. Big windows, wraparound deck, garden wild with lavender and native grasses. Inside, the kitchen smelled of coffee and pancakes. Ethan stood at the stove, shirtless, scars faded to silver lines across his chest, flipping pancakes with the same steady hands that once held guns. A simple gold band glinted on his left hand. Minute-jun, 13 now, tall and lanky, with Ethan's dark eyes and Ji-yun's smile, raced through the room, skateboard under one arm. Dad! You said you'd teach me the ollie today. Ethan grinned. After breakfast, kid. And after you finish that math homework. Minute-jun groaned dramatically but dropped a kiss on his dad's cheek anyway before thundering outside. Ji-yun appeared in the doorway, hair loose and sun-bleached, wearing one of Ethan's old university hoodies that still hung to mid-thigh on her. She carried their youngest, a 2-year-old girl with chubby cheeks and a mop of curls, balanced on her hip. Ethan's face softened the way it always did when he saw them. Morning, beautiful, he said, voice low and warm. Ji-yun crossed the room, leaned in, and kissed him, slow, familiar, still electric after all these years. Morning, husband. The little girl reached for Ethan with a squeal of dada. He took her, settling her on his hip like he was born for it. Ji-yun watched them, her heart so full it almost hurt. Who would have thought, she said softly, that the most feared man in Seoul would be covered in pancake batter and glitter from last night's craft session? Ethan laughed, deep, free, the sound of a man who had left every ghost behind. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. They ate breakfast on the deck, pancakes, fresh berries from the garden, laughter echoing across the water. Minute-jun told stories from school, exaggerating wildly. Their daughter smeared syrup on Ethan's face and giggled when he pretended to be a monster. Ji-yun snapped photos, dozens of them, because she never wanted to forget a single ordinary moment. Later, Ethan and Minute-jun skated down the lakeside path while Ji-yun pushed the stroller, their little girl napping peacefully. The wind carried the scent of pine and freedom. That night, after the kids were asleep, Ethan and Ji-yun sat on the deck under a blanket of stars brighter than any Seoul neon. He pulled her into his lap, arms around her waist, chin on her shoulder. She traced the scar on his chest through his shirt, the one that had almost taken him from her. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked quietly. "The power, the city, the life." He was silent for a moment. "Sometimes I miss the adrenaline," he admitted. "But this." He tightened his arms around her. "This is better than anything I ever built in the dark." She turned in his arms, straddled him, cupped his face. "I love you, Ethan Park," she said, eyes shining. "For the man you were. For the man you became to find me. And for the man you are now, the one who builds Lego towers and reads bedtime stories in silly voices." He kissed her, deep, slow, full of 5 years of peace and a lifetime of gratitude. "I love you more," he whispered against her lips. "Every day, more." They made love that night, quiet, tender, windows open to the mountain air, celebrating the life they'd fought so hard to have. Years passed in flashes of joy. Minit-jun grew into a kind, confident young man. Top of his class, captain of the rugby team, still calling Ethan Appa every day. Their daughter learned to swim in the lake before she could properly walk. Another child came, a boy with Ji-yeon's laugh and Ethan's stubborn chin. Family holidays. School plays. Quiet evenings by the fire. Ethan took up woodworking, built the kids' beds, the kitchen table, a swing on the old oak tree. Ji-yeon wrote a book, not about the darkness, but about light. About love that survives. It became a bestseller, but she kept her name quiet. Their life stayed private. Sacred. One summer evening, 10 years after they'd arrived in New Zealand, Ethan and Ji-yeon sat on the same deck watching fireworks over the lake, some local festival. Minit-jun, now 18, set them off with his siblings, laughter ringing. Ethan pulled Ji-yeon close. "Remember the night I was going to propose?" he asked softly. She nodded, eyes on the bursting colors. "Fireworks over the Han River. I had the ring. You had booties in your bag." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn pair of yellow knitted booties, the ones she'd bought all those years ago. She'd thought they were lost forever. But he'd kept them. Just like he'd kept the ring. Just like he'd kept her. Tears filled her eyes. "I had Sejin track them down," he said. "From the evidence box after everything. I wanted you to have them back." She took them, fingers trembling. "Our first baby," she whispered. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "We got our fireworks after all," he said. She leaned back against him, watching their children light up the sky. "We got everything," she said. And in that moment, surrounded by love, by laughter, by the family they'd bled for, Ji-yeon knew the truth. The darkness had tried to break them. But love had won. Completely. Irrevocably. Forever. The end. My beautiful, beautiful souls. We did it. We walked through fire together and came out on the other side, watching fireworks, holding the people we love, knowing happy endings are real when love fights hard enough. If this story healed something in you, if you're crying the happiest tears, if Ethan, Ji-yeon, Minit-jun, and their little family live in your heart now, drop a comment below. Tell me your favorite moment. Tell me you believe in second chances. Tell me love won for you too. And if you've stayed with me through every part of this 40-minute emotional journey, thank you. From the bottom of my heart. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. There are so many more stories waiting. Stories that will break you open and put you back together, just like this one. This is your storyteller, signing off on one of the most beautiful love stories I've ever told. Thank you for feeling it with me. Until the next one, take care of your hearts. And remember, the greatest love stories aren't the easy ones. They're the ones worth waiting for. Goodbye for now, loves.